Hi, everyone. So it's been about 7 months since we did our last podcast on here, and just so many things happening. And we'll get into that for another time. But thank you so much for your support and everything that I do, all the crazy journeys that I'm on. But I promise there's a method to my madness. So I am back. We are back today, and it's for a very special topic with a very special guest. You know that I don't really dig into things unless I truly believe in them, and if unless the guest has a passion for it. Like we really need to be on track with that, right? So that's why I do what I do, and our story matters. And I give this platform, this safe space to use your voice, to share those hard topics, those hard conversations that we don't have enough of, to get behind the scenes of what's really going on in the world, whether it's for ourselves or for something that we really believe in. And so here we go. I forgot what episode this is, 143, I believe. Oh my gosh, 3 years later, and it's been great, and I'm glad that we're back today with Jazz Cannon. She is a co-founder of the Legend Group, and she'll get into that. But she's also an Afghanistan humanitarian evacuation part of the Afghanistan humanitarian evacuation group that saves trapped Americans, Afghan allies, Christians, and other minorities from the Taliban. Right there, what are you thinking? Seriously, it's that's enough right there. That's all I need to hear, because she really is just trying to restore America's honor in Afghanistan. And for those of us who have deployed there, I know we have mixed feelings about it. I won't get into mine really, but um I think it's important that we have this conversation, because there are things that we don't see. There are things that the news doesn't always report. There are things that people have lived through that we don't hear about. So we're going to hear about it today. So I'm going to bring in Jazz. Hi, Jazz.
Hi, Annette. How are you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for being on here and for reaching out to share this important topic that we don't have
Thank you
enough
so
of.
much for having me. It's a
Yes.
pleasure. Thank you. And I love the name of your show, A Wild Ride Called. And you know what? We're going to unveil the truth. No more hiding.
Right? Yes. That's exactly what we need to do. I was just trying to read, as I was tongue twisting all the words, the mission of Legend Group.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just right there. Afghanistan humanitarian evacuation group that saves trapped Americans, and just that right there is just so heartfelt. Like I don't even know where to begin. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into how you came up with the Legend Group.
Yes. Thank you very much again for having me. I am an Afghan, born in Kabul, but also an Afghan American, very proud American. I received my citizenship just last year, and
Wow.
I was super excited. Immediately applied for my passport, and I was flaunting it on my TikTok. I was that proud, and just very grateful for that. I immigrated from Afghanistan back in the 90s when the first reign of the Taliban took over. My dad, his involvement with the government put him on the hit list, and so all of his family. And so we had no choice but to escape Afghanistan and go to the neighboring country, which was Pakistan. We thought that we were going to be there for a couple of weeks, and my dad with my siblings, mom, thought that we were going to go and apply for political asylum at the U.S. Embassy, and we will be flying to United States. It sounded good. That was a good thought process or action that we had to take. But once we arrived, once we escaped the war zone, we did go to the U.S. Embassy. We waited all day. And the U.S. Embassy didn't even allow us to walk inside, or even give my dad the opportunity for him to explain his situation. And it was a battle since then. We tried to go to the United Nations to apply for some humanitarian parole, and also to get some form of a permanent residency in any country for that matter. We just couldn't be in Pakistan. First of all, the language, we didn't know the language, we didn't have any status. Pakistan was not welcoming of the refugees or immigrants. We were living in a very difficult and desperate situation. We had to support ourselves with our savings. Myself and my siblings, we couldn't go to school, so my dad decided he was going to help homeschool us in the meantime. But we thought what was going to take 2 weeks, it took a decade to leave Pakistan, and it was a struggle every day. The apartments that we lived in didn't have water, proper water system. Electricity was another issue. It was hot. It's like you're talking about Florida weather, but think about no air conditioning. And you're living on the fourth, fifth floor of a flat, or what they call a flat there. It's an apartment, and it wasn't easy. Life was very difficult. But we pulled through. We always say that amongst every adversity, there is an opportunity. And so we were waiting for an opportunity. But after a decade, we were able to leave and resettle in the West. And that is very much a brief 10-year abbreviation of my life story. But this is when we say that history repeats itself. Now, the new reign of the Taliban taking over, I know exactly how the Afghan people are struggling and suffering. And but in any case, when I went to school in the West, and I decided to join a nonprofit organization where we helped resettle refugees and immigrants, and so I became a resettlement counselor. And then later on, after the invasion of Afghanistan last year, I decided to join and become a part of the Legend Group. And here I am.
That's just amazing. I know that there's a lot of us that take being American citizens for granted, and everything that we have here is just like we're just used to it. This is just the way it is. But then we hear from people like you who's like, I've waited 10 years to do this, to come here,
Yeah.
and now you're making a difference. You're not looking back and being disgruntled about it. You're like, okay, what can I do next? And that's such a beautiful thing. It's a powerful thing that I think we need to continue to just relay that to other people and make them appreciate the things that we have. So you are
Absolutely.
I'm still in awe about everything. So you are the co-founder of Legend Group, and you help all these refugees. Now, how is that? It can't be easy. It's heartbreaking at times, right? I mean, how do you get through that?
My phone is blowing every day with text messages, people that I don't even know, that they text me somehow they got my phone from somebody so and so and so. My email is filled with requests. Please help me. Women, in particularly women who are struggling because they worked for the in the government. They were actresses. They were journalists. They were they are at-risk women that are really struggling. And so it is extremely difficult for me. Just 2 nights ago, I was talking to two very vibrant, bright women who are right now in Pakistan, and they're saying that they're living in a tent, and they don't even have the financials to support, or how are they going to provide meal for next month. And my heart breaks. I don't know what to do. I don't know what else I can do beyond my ability of what I can do. So it is very difficult.
I can't imagine because I know I feel so deeply. So when someone's struggling, I struggle with them and it keeps me up at night and I take it so personally because I want to help so much. How do you decompress from that? How do you I don't how do you walk away and just and think I've done everything that I could? How I don't know how to do that.
Well, I don't normally share this, but just because you asked me this question, I'm a little bit of an empath too. So it really doesn't help. I know not many people, but I'm telling you, I connect with them in a very emotional level that decompressing is out of the question. I can take sleeping pills, I can walk it off, I can go hiking, I just need to get myself out of that environment before I get back in. But it's not easy. However, it has become a reality, and I just have to accept it and know that this is my call, this is my mission. And if I'm in it, I'm also Christian. So I do believe that when God's call is in your life and he has assigned you that this is that you need to be doing for the rest of your life, then I really believe that he's going to give me the strength to do it. And every day I receive my strength from God. And all the our wonderful volunteers who have joined us at Legend Group. I feel that God's hand is upon them as well. That's why we're very committed and passionate about what we're doing, saving lives.
I believe that so much. I thank you for saying that you receive your strength through God. It's very difficult at times to believe in that, right? When something goes wrong and something doesn't go your way, it's so hard to think that God has his hand in it and that there is a reason for everything. That's so hard to believe, but I believe it too. And so I appreciate you speaking on that. It's such an important thing that I think a lot of us need to really dig into. So you are the co-founder and you the other person is we call him Legend.
Yes.
How did you meet him and what does he do exactly?
Well, his name is Legend because it's like a call sign
Right.
that was given to him, and that's because well, first of all, he is an Afghan American, but a former U.S. Army Staff Sergeant, and he's working tirelessly to evacuate at-risk Afghans from the persecution of the Taliban. So. Since the fall of Kabul in Afghanistan, Kabul in August back in 2021, when the last American soldier left Afghanistan, he was the one who went back in. And he went there to save his own family members. But then he ended up assisting and rescuing hundreds of at risk Afghans, including US citizens, US lawful permanent residents, Christians, and other minorities, as well as our vetted Afghan allies. And so that became his mission, and that's how he started the Legend Group operation. And a few months later, I discovered him through a politician, in fact, and we joined forces.
That's amazing. God bless him for continuing that fight. I know that's not easy at all.
Yeah.
So what is the current state of affairs from your point of view in Afghanistan?
Ah, well, the state of affairs inside Afghanistan is, and it's
Oh, it seems like we had a little interruption with connectivity, so we will wait for her to come back in. So in the meantime, I will show some comments. Thank you, Tommy M143, for being on here. Thank you. Oh, yes, she is. Let's see here. Okay, we're just waiting for her to come back in. But I'd love to know your thoughts about this topic. I know it can be controversial, so let's try to keep it. Okay, hold on, she's back in. There she is. Sometimes it happens.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you. Sorry about that. I'm not sure how what happens. Like, wait a minute, am I
What?
talking to myself?
Well, I was just showing some comments here we have from people that came in.
Okay.
Let's see, Bradford Parks, Jazz and Legend, Light of the World, Eris Jamil, spectacular. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone. I love my supporters.
All right, so where did we leave off? Your
My point of view.
yeah, point of view in Afghanistan. Yes.
Well, I wanted to tell you, Annette, that the state of affairs inside Afghanistan, it's horrifying for our allies. You know, our interpreters, journalists, advocates, religious minorities, and former Afghan military partners are in dire need of support, as they are hiding from the Taliban, who's searching for them, they're targeting them and killing them. Now, last year, the Afghan people enjoyed the rights to freedom of speech, religion, and the ability to choose their leader. Today, all of those have been, it's been snatched away from them. The Afghan people live in despair, in fear, unable to speak, unable to get justice. They don't want the Taliban, who forcefully invaded the capital, Kabul, and immediately took away the Islamic and the human rights of the Afghan people and subjected them to atrocities which this new generation of Afghans had not witnessed in the past 20 years. So the state of affairs in Afghanistan is inhumane, and it requires the immediate intervention of the world's sole superpower, which you and I both know is the United States and the UN Security Council.
It's heartbreaking to hear that. I wish we could do more. I don't know what to do. I feel speechless because it's such a difficult topic, and to know that there are so many things that we don't see. So
Yeah.
what can you tell us that is also, I mean, you explained a little bit, but what else is going on over there that we're not seeing?
Well, first of all, the American people are veterans whom I absolutely love. And all the friends of Afghans need to know is that what the mainstream media shows them on TV from certain sections of Kabul is not the complete picture. There are two things which the American mainstream has failed to show. First, they failed to show or talk about the beheading, the nighttime shooting, and hanging of those Afghans who worked, alongside the American forces, are now witnessing attacks, and oftentimes, their families are targeted. Men are killed, women are raped by the Taliban. If they feel merciful, they usually dump the bodies outside the family's house or in the village. So it could be buried, but there are times when the bodies are dumped in the river. Now, when Legend was in Afghanistan rescuing the Americans, he saw a Talib drown a man who owned a shop inside, I believe he said, an American military base. And he had been observed entering and leaving the base thousands of times. He was accused of espionage. Now, the second thing that the mainstream has utterly failed to cover is the Afghan people resisting against the Taliban. See, these brave Afghans are continuing the global war against terrorism, and most of our Western journalists are silent on the matter. Take, for example, of CNN's Krishan Amanpour. So she took a trip to Kabul and interviewed Sirajuddin Haqqani, a man responsive uh, uh, for thousands of cowardly attacks against the Afghans and Americans that left thousands of innocent people dead. Haqqani is FBI's most wanted terrorist with a bounty on his head. Now, during that live CNN interview, which was shown to millions of Americans, Christiane Amanpour apologized. Annette, she apologized to Haqqani because he was called a terrorist. Now, our journalists never go to the elected leader of Afghanistan for a live interview. They never went to meet with Commander Ahmed Massoud or President Amrullah Saleh or the Afghan military officers fighting terrorists right now. Instead, we give our platforms and airtime to terrorists who assure Americans that all is well and they have nothing to worry about.
I have no words. How? What is the response from the Afghans, from the people there? What are they? You say that they were just able to have freedom of speech this last year. So what are they voicing? What are they saying?
Yeah, well, when I went to Afghanistan with Legends Help not too long ago, I spoke with Afghans from all walks of life, and it seemed most of them were still in shock. They simply can't understand why the August 15th to August 31st happened and the withdrawal happened. So, for the most part, the Afghan people feel betrayed, lied to, and abandoned. They rightfully question this. How dare the leader of the free world, President Joe Biden, the leader of freedom loving people, order this disastrous withdrawal and retreat, leaving the Afghans to face the Taliban, who were given billions of dollars worth of our weapons? How dare the world betray them? And how dare they continue to remain silent on the Taliban atrocities? They also wonder why this US administration holds secret talks with their oppressors, the Taliban, and why, Annette, why President Biden is sending $32 million every week to the Taliban. I mean, isn't that a valid question? They ask why the State Department refuses to acknowledge the Afghan resistance against the Taliban, Haqqani, Al Qaeda, and ISIS. Not only that, but this State Department discourages resistance against the terrorists who murdered 3,000 American soldiers in the past 20 years and another 3,000 Americans on 9/11 and hundreds of thousands of Afghans. They absolutely feel betrayed.
That is so sad. In what has been the response from over here? What are they saying? What I'm sure. Do they have any kind of response about this? Any comments?
No, nothing. Not from the administration and not the State Department. But everyone else, the world, America, they understand. They see it.
Yeah. So now the Taliban assured that the world would be different this time. Have you seen anything?
I guess that's. I know why you're laughing, and I'm laughing with you on this. Here's the thing. That is one thing that the Taliban didn't lie about. They assured the world that they have changed, and they have. But the change is that they have gotten worse.
Mm.
They have taken away basic human rights from the Afghan population. They have also taken away Islamic rights given to women, the rights to vote, work, the right to educate, marriage of choice, and divorce and more. I mean, nowadays they're forcing young women to marry their Taliban buddies. The Taliban have been they are banning or prohibiting women from wearing colorful scarves. I
Mm.
can't wear color. You're not allowed to wear color. You can only wear black. And the Taliban assured the world that they would change. Now in 1992, if they saw a woman alone, I mean, they would see a woman alone inside a taxi, and they would ban that. They would beat her bloody. And they're doing the same thing today. So only a fool would trust a terrorist. And then Taliban are terrorists. Only a fool would trust the Taliban who say they have changed for the good.
Do you expect to see any kind of change in the next decade or so, or do you think it's just going to continue to be this way?
Well, I really believe that it's not going to change unless um, the administration intervenes. And my fear is that we may have to deploy our men and women again back to Afghanistan.
You think so?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's it and I believe, because at the same time I've seen one of our phenomenal Senator Graham, and he's been predicting the same, that it'll come to a point where we will have to take that action if we don't control it today.
So basically, we should have just never left. It wasn't right. It wasn't time. Mm.
Correct. And even if we did, there would have been there this should have been handled properly.
Right. Could have been done a lot better, a lot different.
Not to affect an entire nation with over 36 million uh, people as their population.
Right.
It's devastating.
Oh my gosh. So let's talk about how some Americans comparing Afghanistan to Ukraine, saying that the Afghan people aren't willing to fight. What is your thoughts on that?
I've done a few videos about this because I was honestly sick and tired of hearing that. All saying that Afghans can fight for themselves, and look what Ukraine is doing. Let me put it clearly. And I had a talk about this with Legend. I said, Bill, I need to know your input about this. And he says that we can compare Afghanistan to Ukraine because we can try and compare history, but we can compare the history of these two countries. Now, hear me out. So the Russians invaded Afghanistan in the 70s. At that time, the Soviet Russians had the most powerful army. They killed Afghans and destroyed the whole nation and buried more landmines than there were people. The Soviet Russian Empire was huge, and so it included most of the European countries, including Ukraine. It was the Afghan people, led by the warrior from the Arpanjshir Valley, which is a province, who defeated the mighty Soviet army. We hope and pray for Ukrainians to succeed, in their objective to seek freedom. But we have yet to see Ukraine defeat Russia. Now, Afghans already defeated the Russians. In fact, it was after the humiliating defeat of the Soviet Union in Afghanistan that these that the Soviet Union collapsed and many Eastern European nations gained their independence. One of those countries was Ukraine. So Ukraine owes its independence in part to Afghanistan and to the brave Afghan resistance fighters who defeated the Soviet Russia. And so it's now time Ukraine helps Afghanistan in their new resistance against the Taliban terrorists. That's my belief. Enough said.
And, and we'll leave it at that. So let's talk about the humanitarian work that the Legend Group has underway.
Right. This is where my passion is, and this is where I wouldn't stop talking, but I'm going to keep it very limited. Now, the Legend Group plan is to continue its humanitarian efforts in Afghanistan. We have provided and plan to continue providing free meals and medical support to our thousands of individuals. We plan to keep open and use our safe houses for those at risk, high at risk individuals and families. There are hundreds of orphan children of former Afghan soldiers who died fighting against the terrorists. And those orphans and widows now beg for food. We do our best to help them as much as humanly possible. We also focus on preventing underage girls from becoming terrorist brides. The Taliban and their allies prey on these vulnerable, hungry families. They provide them some food and services in exchange for marrying their underage daughters. So we do take pride in saving those little boys whose parents, were or are on a verge of selling them for food. Loving Afghan parents are forced to sell one of their children on the market in order to buy food to feed the rest of their children. Can you imagine that? If they don't, all of their children will die of starvation. So we do our best to find and protect these children by supporting their families. And we plan to continue saving our Afghan allies and American citizens and LPRs still behind the enemy line. But the one thing, Annette, is that I cannot fathom, and I still am struggling to understand how can you imagine yourself, bring yourself in their shoe and think about, do I really have to sell my child in order to feed the rest of my children if I have to?
I can't even imagine that at all. It just breaks my heart to know, to even hear that. Those are the things that we don't hear on the news. We don't think about that stuff.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't know, or we choose to block it out because it's so devastating. It's I can't imagine that.
These are the facts, that is not being shown in the mainstream media, and it's going on today. But do you even see anything, with the exception of what's going on in the Hollywood world or football?
We won't even talk about that. Football.
Yeah, but it's just that we're also human,
Right.
and we need to be kind to our fellow humans who are struggling.
Right. What do you have to say to our politicians? What message do you have for them?
Well, Legend and we have met with many politicians this past year, and I actually have two things to say. First, we need to unite and have hearings on the events of August 15 to August 31st and call a wrong decision a wrong decision. In this case, we're talking about a disastrous withdrawal and a retreat where, billions of dollars worth of our weapons were left for global terrorists, right? Some of those have already been sold to Iran and Pakistan and China. After that hearing, we need to hold those who screwed up accountable. This isn't something, one should be able to get away with. And my second message is simple. We need to stand behind the NRF, which is the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan. It's either we support them now while they fight off terrorists, or we will remain silent. And a few months or years down the road, like I mentioned earlier when you asked me that question, that we are going to redeploy our sons and daughters back to Afghanistan and that region to face their death with no allies to support us on the ground.
Well, let's hope that they listen. They hear you.
Have this podcast, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, let's do something, do something about it and just admit fault. Everybody needs to we're supposed to learn how to do that. Just admit that we're wrong and how can we fix it. So we're leaning on you guys, the politicians, our leaders, to do the same thing. Otherwise this is going to continue to spiral out of control like it has been for the past 15 years. Now, what is your message to Americans? What can we do?
Well, I want to say that as an Afghan American, my message to my fellow Americans is that after 9/11, we would be making a huge mistake if we ignore the terrorists in Afghanistan. And I'll explain why. We know terrorist groups are now back in Afghanistan working with the Taliban. They're planning on attacking America again. We can solve this. We can help ourselves by helping the Afghan resistance who are fighting the terrorists right now. Let's call our representatives and senators and elected officials and ask them to ban the Taliban and support the Afghan People's National Resistance Front. Our leaders in Congress must help the veteran operated NGOs such as the Legend Group as we provide humanitarian aid to the most needy and our allies in Afghanistan. There are 22 million Afghans right now facing acute hunger. Our allies and our partners are in safe houses, and there are costs associated with operating these safe houses. So we need our government to fund the Legend Group and other veteran-operated NGOs, such as those in the Moral Compass Federation, so we could continue helping our allies.
So how can we help your movement? What can we do besides, what you just mentioned?
Well, we need more volunteers,
Okay.
pro bono lawyers, media experts, fundraising experts, advisors, and small donors, and some very wealthy donors, Annette.
Those always help.
And you can help us, and please, and visit us at legend.ngo and look at some of our work. Please watch some of my videos, some of my success videos, some of the videos that shows how some of these families that arrived here safely in the United States, they're expressing their gratitude, they're expressing their excitement that now they get to reset. It's a reset that they're looking forward to, so they can start a new life here in the United States. So I'm hoping, praying, and trusting that we would receive that type of a support from our fellow Americans.
I hope so too. I'm going to be sharing this out. So we can go to legend.ngo to get more information on how to do all of that.
That's correct.
Okay. Absolutely. So for those of you who are watching, listening, or if you want to share this and you want to do something to make a difference in the world, this is where you need to go. There's obviously things that we don't know about that we just spoke about for the last 40 minutes. That's not broadcasted on social media. There's all these little things that are actually really big things that we don't know about. And if you can support, then this is where it's needed right now. And it breaks my heart because I didn't realize all of that. I was in Afghanistan. I got to see and interact with the locals, but God, never in my wildest dreams knew all these little details of how affected these families were, and the women and the children, and it's just unfathomable. I can't imagine. So I appreciate you. Gosh, it's such an honor to meet someone like you, and to hear about the work that you're doing. You are a blessing. This is your mission, and I'm so glad that God put that into you. This is exactly what was needed. Let's see here, Tiffany. Don't you say you are in charge if you aren't going to contribute to the. Don't say you are in charge if you aren't going to contribute. Okay. Yes, Tiffany. I had to read that a couple times. Yes.
That's right.
Yes, that is true. Tiffany is a great supporter. I love her. Please share this out, Tiffany, if you get a chance, so that we can get more volunteers and anybody profit large donations, pro
Small
bono
donations,
lawyers, small, any size donations that's possible, because those safe
please.
houses are important. Oh my gosh, I hear safe houses in so many different capacities for several
Mm.
different um, things that are going on in the world, and we don't realize what goes into those. How
Yes, it
important they
requires
are.
security. Absolutely,
Yep.
it requires 24-hour security, and that's not easy to manage, as well as ensuring that we're not uh, accidentally disclosing, those the safe houses to the wrong people.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That is so important, more than we can even imagine. So, thank you again, Jazz. It was such a pleasure meeting you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And you just reach out to me and let me know anything else you need. But otherwise, we will start from here.
Absolutely. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Bye bye now.
Bye.